You're scrolling through your phone while a video plays in the background, music in your headphones, 3 tabs open on your laptop. Nothing feels quite enough on its own anymore. And the strange part? You're not even enjoying it. You're just occupied. Most people assume this is just how modern life works. But there's something happening beneath the surface that almost no one talks about. It's not about willpower. It's not about discipline. It's about what constant stimulation quietly takes from you when you're not paying attention. Let's be clear about what we're talking about here. Constant stimulation isn't about being busy. It's not about working hard or having a full schedule. It's about filling every empty moment with input, noise, sensation, novelty. It's the podcast during the walk, the video during the meal, the scrolling between tasks, the background show you're not really watching, the need to have something, anything, happening at all times. 20 years ago, boredom was normal. You'd sit on a train and just sit there, look out the window, think, wait, nothing to do about it. Now, the moment your brain has nothing to process, you reach for something, and the gaps between reaching get shorter and shorter. This didn't happen because you're weak. It happened because the entire environment changed. Everything became frictionless. Infinite content, instant access, algorithms designed to predict what you'll want before you even feel the urge. And your brain adapted. It learned that empty moments don't have to exist anymore. Most people don't notice this part. The adaptation isn't neutral. It changes what your mind expects, what it tolerates, what it can do. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. Seek novelty, avoid discomfort, and conserve energy. Novelty signals potential reward. A new post, a new video, a new notification. Your brain treats each one like it might contain something important. Even when you know it won't, the possibility is enough. And here's the thing. Stimulation works. It does make the moment feel better. Not good, but better than whatever feeling you're avoiding. Because that's usually what's happening. You're not reaching for your phone because you're curious. You're reaching for it because sitting with your own thoughts feels worse. Silence is uncomfortable. Stillness is uncomfortable. The absence of input means you're left with whatever's actually going on inside your head. And for most people, that's not a place they want to be. So the phone becomes a buffer. The video becomes background. The scrolling becomes a reflex. Not because it feels good, but because it feels better than nothing. At first, this seems harmless. Just a small habit. A minor preference. This is where it quietly gets expensive. Part 1. Loss of mental depth. The first thing constant stimulation takes from you is depth. Your brain gets very good at what it practices. And if you spend most of your waking hours jumping between inputs, switching contexts, processing surface-level information, that's what your mind learns to do. Deep focus starts to feel unnatural. Reading a book without checking your phone becomes difficult. Thinking through a problem without distraction feels slow and frustrating. Sitting in silence for even 5 minutes feels like something's wrong. This isn't a matter of attention span in the way people usually talk about it. It's something more structural. Your mind stops building the pathways that let you go deep. It starts optimizing for fast, shallow, reactive processing instead. And the tricky part is, you don't feel dumber. You still feel like yourself. You're still capable of thinking. But the quality of that thinking changes. You lose the ability to sit with complexity, to hold a thought long enough to examine it from different angles, to let an idea develop without rushing to the next thing. Creativity suffers. Problem-solving suffers. Insight suffers. Because those things require space. They require time spent in your own head, doing nothing but thinking. And when you can't tolerate that space anymore, you lose access to the parts of your mind that only show up when things get quiet. Here's what almost nobody connects. This isn't just about work or productivity. It affects how you understand yourself. There's another piece to this that most people miss entirely. Constant stimulation creates the feeling of being informed. You're reading articles, watching videos, listening to podcasts. You're taking in information constantly. It feels productive, like you're learning, like you're staying sharp. But here's what actually happens. You're consuming without processing. Information passes through you without sticking. You read something, nod along, feel like you understand it, and an hour later you couldn't explain it if someone asked. Because understanding requires digestion. It requires time to think about what you've learned, to connect it to what you already know, to test it against your own experience, to notice what doesn't quite fit. When you move immediately from one piece of content to the next, that process never happens. You accumulate facts without context, opinions without examination, ideas without integration. So you end up knowing a lot of things in a very shallow way. You can participate in conversations. You can reference the right articles. You can sound informed. But if someone asks you what you actually think, not what you've heard but what you believe based on your own reasoning, the answer gets harder to find. Because you've been outsourcing your thinking to the content you consume. And the more you consume, the less room there is for your own thoughts to form. Part 2. Emotional flatness. The second cost is emotional range. When you're constantly stimulated, your emotional baseline shifts. Small pleasures stop registering. A good meal, a conversation, a walk, they start to feel flat. Not bad, just not enough. Because your brain has recalibrated. It's used to higher levels of input, faster hits of novelty, more intense sensations. Normal life can't compete with that, so you need more. Louder music, more intense content, faster cuts, stronger stimulation just to feel okay. But it doesn't stop there. The other side of this is that you also stop feeling the full weight of difficult emotions. Sadness, frustration, loneliness, they get interrupted before they fully land. You scroll them away. You distract yourself out of them. And that sounds like a good thing. Who wants to feel bad? But emotions aren't just obstacles. They're information. They tell you what matters, what's wrong, what needs attention. When you can't sit with them long enough to understand them, you lose access to that information. You end up in this narrow middle band. Not quite happy, not quite sad. Just occupied. Buffered from both ends of your emotional life. And most people don't realize how much they've lost until they try to feel something fully again. Part 3. Constant low-level stress. The third cost is tension that never quite resolves. Constant stimulation keeps your nervous system in a low-grade activated state. You're always slightly alert, always ready for the next input, always scanning. Even when you think you're relaxing, your body never fully settles. Your mind never fully rests. Because rest isn't just the absence of work, it's the absence of stimulation. And you're rarely giving yourself that anymore. This shows up in small ways at first. Trouble falling asleep, tight shoulders, a vague sense of being tired even after sleeping, irritability that doesn't seem to have a clear cause. People assume this is just stress from work or life circumstances, and maybe it is. But constant stimulation makes it worse. It keeps the stress response humming in the background, never quite switching off. Because your brain interprets constant input as a signal that something important might happen at any moment. And if something important might happen, your system stays ready, vigilant, on call. The problem is, nothing actually important is happening. It's just noise. But your body doesn't know that. So you end up carrying this tension everywhere. Not acute anxiety, just a baseline hum of low-level activation that becomes so normal, you stop noticing it's there. Until you finally experience real calm and realize how tense you've been for years. Part 4. Avoidance of self. The fourth cost might be the most important one. Constant stimulation becomes a way to avoid yourself. When your mind is always occupied, you never have to confront what's actually going on beneath the surface. The doubts, the questions you're not ready to answer, the feelings you're not ready to feel, the decisions you're avoiding. Stimulation keeps you at a distance from all of that. It fills the space where self-reflection would normally happen. And for a while, that feels like relief. But those things don't disappear. They accumulate. And the longer you avoid them, the more you lose touch with what you actually want, what actually matters to you, what you're actually feeling. You become a stranger to yourself. Not in a dramatic way, just in a slow, quiet way where you stop checking in. You stop asking the hard questions. You stop examining whether the life you're living is the one you actually want. And the dangerous part is, This doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like staying busy, staying informed, staying entertained. It feels like you're just living your life. But there's a difference between living your life and running from it. And constant stimulation makes it very easy to do the second one without realizing it. This is where it stops being about focus or productivity and starts being about something deeper. Here's something most people don't think about. Constant stimulation erodes your ability to know what you actually like. When you're always consuming what an algorithm serves you, when you're always clicking what catches your attention in the moment, when you're always following the path of least resistance, you stop making deliberate choices about what you spend your time on. You lose track of your own taste, your own preferences, the things you genuinely enjoy versus the things you just consume because they're there. Someone asks what kind of music you like, and you realize you mostly just listen to whatever playlist autoplays. You can't remember the last time you actively chose something, the last time you sought out a specific artist or album because you wanted to hear it. Same with videos, same with articles, same with everything you consume. It all starts to blend together. You're not curating your inputs anymore, you're just receiving them. And this might seem trivial. Who cares if you're not actively choosing what you watch or listen to? But preference is how you develop taste. And taste is how you develop identity. When you stop knowing what you like, you stop knowing who you are. You become whoever the algorithm thinks you are, whoever the content suggests you should be. And that version of you is designed to keep consuming, not to be satisfied. There's a reason people who step away from constant stimulation for even a week often come back with a clearer sense of what they actually want. It's not that they discovered something new. It's that they remembered something they'd forgotten. Here's why most people don't see this happening. The changes are gradual. You don't wake up one day unable to focus. You just notice that books feel slower than they used to, that quiet feels uncomfortable, that you reach for your phone more often. Each small shift feels minor, manageable, not worth worrying about. And everyone around you is doing the same thing. Constant stimulation is normalized, expected. It's how modern life works. So there's no contrast, no reference point that makes you stop and question whether this is okay. Add to that the fact that productivity culture celebrates being busy, being plugged in, being responsive. The same behaviors that fragment your attention get framed as virtues. So you keep going. You keep filling the gaps. You keep scrolling, switching, consuming. And the costs accumulate so slowly that by the time you notice, you've forgotten what it felt like before. Here's what changes everything. This isn't a personal failing. It's a design problem. The environment you're living in was built to capture your attention and keep it. The apps, the platforms, the content, they're engineered to make constant stimulation feel necessary, to make stopping feel like you're missing out. But just because it's normal doesn't mean it's neutral. There's one more cost that almost never gets mentioned. Constant stimulation changes how you relate to other people. Not in obvious ways. You're not ignoring people or being rude. You're present. You're responding. You're having conversations. But something's different. When someone's talking to you, there's this faint sense of waiting. Waiting for them to finish so you can check your phone. Waiting for the conversation to get more interesting. Waiting for something to pull your attention somewhere else. You're there, but you're not fully there. And the other person can feel it, even if they can't name it. Because constant stimulation trains you to expect every moment to be engaging. And real conversations aren't always engaging. They have pauses, slow parts, moments where nothing much is happening. But those moments are where connection actually forms, in the silence, in the space between words, in the willingness to just be with someone without needing the interaction to entertain you. When you lose your tolerance for those moments, relationships start to feel like work, like something you have to maintain rather than something you get to experience. You start gravitating toward people who are easy, who don't require much attention, who fit into the gaps between your other distractions. And the deeper relationships, the ones that require presence, patience, vulnerability, those start to feel exhausting. Not because the people are difficult, but because you're not practiced in being fully present anymore. This is one of those things you don't notice until it's already happened. until you realize you don't have anyone you can sit with in comfortable silence, until you notice that most of your relationships exist through screens and scheduled check-ins rather than shared time and attention. Real calm isn't what most people think it is. It's not peace. It's not bliss. It's not some transcendent state where everything feels perfect. Real calm is uncomfortable. At first, it feels like something's missing, like you should be doing something, like you're wasting time, because your brain has been trained to equate stimulation with productivity, with engagement, with living. And when you remove that, there's this gap, this silence, this absence of input that your mind doesn't know how to handle anymore. But if you stay with it, if you don't immediately fill the space, something shifts. Your thoughts slow down. Your nervous system starts to settle. The noise in your head gets quieter, and you start to notice things you've been missing. Small details, subtle sensations, the texture of your own mind when it's not racing from one thing to the next. This is where depth comes back, where emotional clarity returns, where you start to feel like yourself again, instead of just a processor of external input. But it takes time. Your brain needs to recalibrate, to remember that empty moments aren't dangerous, that boredom isn't an emergency, that stillness isn't the same as stagnation. And here's the part most people don't expect. Once you experience real calm, even briefly, going back to constant stimulation starts to feel exhausting. You don't need to delete your apps or move to the woods. That's not the point. The point is to reintroduce friction, to create small moments where your brain has to sit with itself instead of reaching for the next thing. Leave your phone in another room sometimes, not as a rule, just as an experiment. See what it feels like to walk around your home without it in your pocket. Let meals be meals. No video, no scrolling, just food and whatever thoughts come up. Take one walk a week with nothing. No music, no podcast, just the sound of your own footsteps and whatever your mind wants to do with that space. These aren't productivity hacks. They're not optimizations. They're just ways to break the reflex, to give your brain a chance to remember what it's like when nothing is demanding its attention. And the key is, don't make it a system. Don't turn it into another thing you have to do perfectly. Just notice when you're reaching for stimulation out of reflex instead of intention. And sometimes, don't reach. That's it. That's the whole thing. Not a routine, not a challenge, just awareness, just choice, just the occasional willingness to sit with yourself instead of running from the discomfort of your own mind. Over time, that small shift compounds. Your tolerance for stillness increases. Your need for constant input decreases. And the quality of your attention, your thinking, your feeling, your presence, starts to come back. Constant stimulation doesn't feel like a loss while it's happening. It feels like staying engaged, like keeping up, like living a full life. But somewhere along the way, you trade depth for breadth, presence for distraction, yourself for the noise. And the question isn't whether you can live without your phone or your apps or your content. The question is, what are you avoiding by never putting them down? Because the cost isn't what you're consuming, it's what you're missing. The parts of your mind that only show up in the quiet. The parts of your life that only reveal themselves when you stop running. And maybe the most uncomfortable truth is this. You already know that. You felt it. In those rare moments when the noise stops and you're left with just yourself. The fleeting discomfort. The brief recognition that something's been lost. The question is whether you're willing to sit with that long enough to find out what's on the other side. And hey, if you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts below.